And we are finally, Bob, we're finally back.
We're finally back on the podcast that counts.
What do we call it again?
Burger Nag?
Oh, God, Jesus.
Nag Burger?
We're back with Climax. It's called, hey, listen.
I forgot about that.
It's called Climax. We have no guests today. Do we have any guests around us?
No. It's just going to be you and me today.
Not a single one.
Climax.
We did the first one. We did our pilot. We thought we would just talk about what we were going to do.
We've had a variety of guests in the past.
Well, we had...
One of our favorite episodes starring Tina Toner. You remember that one?
Yeah, we had Tina Toner.
Real good show.
Jessica, another great guest. We had great guests. And now, finally, I've made myself time and I'm free for you now. So, what's on your mind?
Have you received any comments from previous podcasts that perhaps we should share with the audience, or?
Oh, I've basically, everyone told me that I should basically just keep going, and so many people were like, "Hey, what are you doing? Where is this going?"
So what are you doing?
What am I doing? What are you doing?
Okay, but you must have some things on your mind.
Oh, I mean, listen, what province are we in right now?
I thought we were trying to be international, but we are in Quebec, Canada.
We are in Quebec, Canada. Perfect. And as far as I know, we're dealing with a couple of issues in Quebec. One being a certain Bill 21 burqa ban.
Okay.
What happened there?
Why don't you start by describing your understanding of Bill 21? That was recently passed, by the way, by the National Assembly.
Right. As far as I understand, it was essentially the government dictating whether or not a judge, police officer, or public school teacher was allowed to wear religious headgear. And it was essentially a ban on that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's pretty accurate. Basically, the intent was to make sure that anyone in the public service would not wear religious symbols that would allow the public service to remain state neutral. So as much as you're referring to it as a burqa ban, a burqa is, if you want to consider, a religious piece of headgear.
Right.
But all religious artifacts are excluded from public service. So it's important we recognize that
it is important that we recognize that it spans across all religions.
All religions, including Christianity.
Of course.
And
actually, no, hold on. Whoa, they recognize that because Christianity is at the origin of the growth and development and inherent heritage of Quebec, they've actually not banned the cross.
That's not true.
Oh, no?
Absolutely not.
No?
No, you cannot.
I heard they were muddling over...
There's no herd in this. There's no judge that can wear a prominent cross while listening to a case or rendering a verdict.
Perfect. So now we're not... I mean, not jokes aside. So do you believe in a secular state?
Well, this is what it is. They're going after the secular state. And of course, the important thing to realize in this is that there's a duality going on here. As much as we want to welcome immigrants and bring their cultures in, at the same time, they will find themselves not allowed to display artifacts of their religion while working for the public service. So it's a bit of a duality.
And
you're welcome, but you're not welcome to present those artifacts while you work. What's interesting about all this is that as much as Quebec is trying to become a secular state, we're surrounded by other states and countries around us that are doing the opposite, in fact, a lot of the campaigning around Bill 21, once it was passed by the government of Ontario, the government of BC, Alberta as well, joined in. They said, if you cannot live in Quebec and do your work and you're fully qualified,
we'll take you in.
That's
right.
So as much as we believe immigration is helpful to enter a population base that's missing in Quebec, at the same time, it's an encouragement to leave.
So let me play devil's advocate then.
Right.
I'm someone who's pro CAQ, pro CAQ, pro current local government that's instilling this. Why is it a good thing? Why would it be a good thing to
the question I'm really asking is, are we ahead of our times? In other words, this is the way the world is going to be in the end? Or are we in backwards time where diversity and religious artifacts were, in the past banned, if you remember? The thing that put in context here, you remember we're in a very special place in Quebec. Yep. Because through the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the church had an incredible influence in public life.
Yep.
And due to that, much of what we see as Quebec today has been the turnover of that. Meaning
Absolutely.
they've pushed the Catholic religion and the priests and all of that out of the everyday life.
Up until the early 1960s, it was a Christian state. It was only until that time,
Correct.
and the sacking of basically Maurice Duplessis, that we essentially became a completely secular state.
So understanding that is very important in this contextual discussion because a lot of what they are presuming to do here with this law is to make sure they never get back to that.
Right.
They're protecting themselves from getting back to that in the future.
So
that's one version
So
of...
you think it's part of an identity that they need to instill?
Preserve.
Well, preserve is the better word. You're right. So to preserve.
Correct. Now think about the fact that we're talking identity politics as well, right?
Oh, I was going to get into that, but
But
okay.
what identity are we talking about, right? A lot of people think that the Quebec present day is undefined. Undefined because we don't really know what Quebec really... what a typical Quebecer is. We haven't defined what that is.
You don't think there are two big steps that Quebec needs to take? One, to render secularism basically as a norm, and two, to instill a language that has basically been that is unable to be removed by any corporate.
You're talking about French language
Of
now.
course,
Well,
by any corporate power.
I wouldn't say that it's being removed. It's being protected.
Because I'm talking from the perspective of the person that's instilling this law. They basically think if I don't, one, make this a secular state, and two, protect my French language, what is the identity of my province? What is the point?
And often I've called you on the phone and I've referred to you with a great expression, which I find highly ironic at this point.
Tell me.
Sometimes I call you and I say, "Comment ça va, mon petit Kiris?" And what I love about that expression is, "My little Christ." And as much as I'm a big fan of the Catholic religion,
As we all are.
I'm actually nailing you to the cross. No pun intended.
No, but
Think about it, mon petit Kiris.
oh, it's 100% true.
My little Christ. As much as we want to be secular, are we?
Yeah.
When I say tabarnak, colis,
These, by the way, are Quebecois French swear words
monasti,
that are basically they are
The
derivatives
artifact of the church.
of the church, of the French Christian
So think
Catholic
about that.
Church.
Think about that.
But you don't think there's a way to delineate from that while
Well,
preserving your cultural identity?
Because I think asti, tabarnak, and colis are the identity of Quebec. I don't
Really?
think you can be a true Quebecer without using tabarnak, asti, and colis. Honestly.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just in every country, in every province, in
That's
every
right.
place, there are people that
I'm
swear
just
of
showing
different
you.
kinds.
I'm just showing you the irony.
Different sorts.
I'm just showing you the irony.
Oh, of
That the
course.
Quebec culture itself has the church instilled into it.
So I think the underlying question is
Yes.
it okay for us to accept an immigrant, first and foremost, and then to be able to allow them to live in a culture that is tolerant of their religion? And not only tolerant, but allows them
Promote it.
to promote, not necessarily to promote it, but that is able to, I guess, champion tolerance, diversity, and the freedom to express yourself in any way, shape, or form, including freedom of religion.
So that's an interesting aspect.
But are we that identity? Are we that culture? Are we those people that are going to allow these people to do their job, and are we going to judge based on how you do your job or based on how you look?
So interesting you mention all this, because if you remember, an integral part of Bill 21 was the fact that Simon Jolin Barrette, who was the minister that passed that, great guy, Simon Jolin Barrette,
Champion.
a true champion. Jolin Barrette, he made sure in the passage of that bill that it would not be contested by the Canadian Charter of Freedom. Remember the Canadian Charter of Laws and Freedom?
Yep.
Which allows you the right to be free
Yep.
in your religious identity and whatever.
Absolutely.
So they shielded it from the Canadian Freedom Act. How? Do you remember how they did it?
I don't.
They invoked the notwithstanding clause, which in itself is a recognition of guilt in some way. They knew that this could be challenged at the federal level. And to exempt it from ever being channeled, they used the one tool that they could. And that tool was the notwithstanding clause.
But that's a nice framework to ensure that it never gets questioned by anyone or challenged.
Correct.
But again, I'm asking the underlying question, which is, what does this say about our tolerance and our acceptance of immigrants that we allow into this country and this province?
Well, that's a very big question you're asking, because you're separating country and province, even though the province is part of the country of Canada.
Absolutely. There's no denying
I
that.
think it's a very important decision that immigrants will have to take when they decide to immigrate to Quebec. I think this is part of the identity crisis that Quebec has, and they want to make sure as you walk in the door, these are the rules. And although you think you're immigrating to Canada, I can tell you an immigrant that enters into Quebec will be very differently treated than one that enters into Ontario.
In what way?
Think about, in every way. We were talking about Bill 21. That's one of the basics, right?
Right.
I mean, you want to be a teacher in Ontario? No problem. You can display all the hijab you want. Right?
But again, does it... So again, let's get back to the question I'm asking. Does it matter that you're wearing the hijab?
I was going to ask you that question. Does it matter?
In my opinion, I mean, in the very first podcast we did, we talked about sexual assault allegations, and then you asked me if I care about whether the person did something, and can I then look past that and look at their talents? Well, the answer is no, I can't. But in this case, I look solely at your talents, your skills, and your professional experience. Do I care what you wear? Absolutely not. If I have a child, I want them to be taught by the best person, hijab, or not. And quite frankly, this goes to people of the Jewish religion that wear the kippah. I could care less if you wear the kippah, you wear a cross, you wear certain sandals. I could care less so long as you are... I'm serious.
Certain sandals?
So long... Listen, we're not dealing with Aladdin here, but you know what I mean.
We are.
I could care...
Certain sandals.
I could care
I never
less.
realized the sandals were a religious artifact.
Oh my God, you're gonna...
That's a good one.
But it's true. At the end of the day,
when you talk
I don't care.
When you talk about bus drivers and teachers, that's an area that's, let's
workers
call it,
of the public service.
Correct.
Yes.
But when you talk about judge and police,
Yep.
there is a different level of authority. Now, this bill has linked all authority to be the same.
Right.
A teacher's authority equals to a policeman's authority equals to a judge's authority. I differ in that way. I don't think that all authority in this area is the same. I think teachers and bus drivers and people at the SAC and those that are the other SAC, there's two SACs in Quebec. There's the Automobile Insurance Association,
and then
the
there's
SAC,
the drinking,
and then there's the drinking institution,
SAC.
the SAC, and they're both called
the
SACs.
more popular SAC.
Right, they're both called SACs.
Of course.
I group the SACs and the bus drivers and those officials into one category that I believe have less authority as they deliver their services.
Right.
Judge and police officer, different situation. If you have a judge that's sitting on the bench with a burqa, making a judgment towards a Jew with a kippah,
Right.
or Jean-François from Joliette,
Right.
it creates... I'm just trying to paint the picture for you to imagine the courtroom setting.
Right.
Isn't it a bit different in terms of authority relations?
I'm glad you bring that up.
All right.
Because
sometimes when they talked about Bill 21, they talked about it from an authority point of view.
Of course.
And they painted the picture of the
They're
courtroom.
trying to...
And yet when they implemented it at the level of the SAC.
They are trying to determine a level of authority for these courts and the police in order to instill a certain secular hierarchy.
But do we all agree that the authority part of this is not the same?
Well, here's where I differ a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I see
I see
a judge And I'm no holds barred on this. This is the new me.
Is this a speeding ticket you want to talk about?
Absolutely not.
No? Parking ticket?
No, this is not a hypothetical story. I'm just saying
A sexual assault charge.
Oh, God. So you painted a picture of a person of Jewish descent,
setting, a courtroom
a courtroom setting with a person of Jewish descent, claiming no fault on something at the behest of a judge who happens to be of Sikh descent, let's
a
just
turban,
say
yeah,
with a
sure.
turban. Yeah, sure. To me, in my eyes, I see that person as having passed the bar, having gone to either Université de Montréal, University of Ottawa, any of the renowned schools that we have here in Canada, having been able to, for so long, look at the law from an objective lens, and who now is being judged based on not what he wears over his head, but how he performs his duties. And so then if he chooses then, as a religious obligation, according to him, to wear this, does that hinder his judgment on someone of an opposite religion or of any other different religious, representation, be it Jewish, Christian, Sikh, Jainist? And my answer is no. My answer is I don't think so. I don't think that person who went all this way, who went out of his way, put years of effort to become a judge, a lawyer, a police officer, a public servant, a civil officer for our country and province, is going to then have that objective lens after all the work he put in. Should we then basically tell everyone to not have a subjective view based on what they wear religiously? You can't dictate that. I understand they are going for a certain authoritative hierarchy. If you are a police officer, you should be respecting the law and be above the law, in the sense that no religion will then have more of an importance or less. But I don't honestly think, after all the certification, I mean, the U.S. is a different story, and we're going to get to the U.S. later. Don't worry, I didn't forget that.
But have you been reading the news lately where you see Jean-François and Geneviève beating up the black people in Little Burgundy?
How does that have anything to do with Bill 21?
Because you're saying that you truly believe in your heart that these people who obtained those degrees,
Correct.
whether it's judge or police officer,
Correct.
are able to do their jobs objectively.
Yes.
I'm showing you they can't.
Because of one minute case?
Is it only one case?
Of course.
So as I was saying, it's important that we realize that at this point, the person that you believe to be in authority can do their duties objectively, and I'm proving to you that they can't.
With one minute example.
Okay.
Are you honestly telling me that the person who went out of their way to study is going to let a certain religious belief impede their judgment that they have studied so long to achieve? I have a hard time believing that. I
can tell you that the Simon Jolin Barrett's view of that is that I don't believe they can be objective, and to make sure of it, I'm going to pass this law to make sure it's never going to happen. That's what he did. He made sure of it for centuries to come.
So you're saying he made a law?
That doubt that I raised today is never going to be in doubt in the future.
I love it. So you're telling me that they made a law based on doubt and prejudice.
Correct.
And that
how else could you interpret it?
But that
It's to protect the culture to be, how'd you call it again? Secular, forever and ever.
which is inherently a
Because
lie.
you don't trust that the degree's objectivity is greater than your religious artifact, right? That's what it is. I mean, that's the basic of this law.
Fantastic. So rather than poll it, rather than look at its popularity, which by the way hovers around 45 to 50%, which is not a majority, sorry, you then, based on a lie, a prejudice, based on a judgment of your own and perhaps of your party.
Let us also remember the CAQ government. Their base is not in 514 or 450.
418?
Their base is in 418, but more importantly, 819. And all the external areas of Quebec, the rural areas of Quebec, where immigration has always been feared, religious headgear has always been feared, the English language has always been feared to erode the French culture. I'm talking about places like Joliette, Drummondville, Sainte-Agathe-des-Monts. right? That's where the CAC base is, and that's from where they got elected. So if you think that this government is represented by the 514, they don't represent the 514.
And yet it affects the 514
possibly
the most.
more.
Yeah.
So this is a reward to rural Quebec.
The base.
The base. Which came from rural Quebec. So if you think about it, that's when they say that's what the majority of people wanted. Simon was referring to his people.
So are you saying that when it comes to these parties' bases, especially when it comes to a more right-wing platform, your base is going to be more rural? Base is going to be...
Isn't that what politics is all about?
Well, because I'm
serving
thinking
the base.
I'm thinking of a certain orange orangutan that's running the United States right now. His base is...
I really like that guy, by the way.
You do?
There's a lot of people that would vote for him again.
Would you?
The guy's going to be MAGA 2020.
Well,
telling
actually,
you right
now it's Keep America Great. CAG 2020.
Oh, CAG 2020.
Yeah. So let me ask you then.
like that.
We're segueing. It's a nice segue. Who would you vote for in 2020?
I wouldn't vote.
You wouldn't vote? You would abstain?
I would abstain.
Not even Green Party, Libertarians? No? Why not?
Too complex.
Too complex.
Why
is that?
I'm split because on one side, I believe in the base of what he's doing.
Really?
Which is protecting America.
How is he protecting America?
Because America hasn't been protected for a long time.
Okay.
And I think putting America first is a great goal.
Okay.
And on the other hand...
Can you talk about a policy that he's done that you maybe...
Every single policy that he has worked on or publicized has been putting America first. Every single one. Name one, it's there. The other side of the coin is he's a terrible diplomat. He's a terrible human relations person. It's not a person that shows empathy, that is able to motivate and engage a country and the people of that country. So I'm able to dissect the two, okay? There's that part of him, that the agenda that's truly honorable and noble. And then there's that part of him that it doesn't play well in public. So this is the kind of stuff that should be left in a boardroom. Strategically, it shouldn't be in the public, but the strategies are very important for America.
I have to...
Disagree with everything.
100% disagree.
Then go ahead. I like to hear your point of view. And of course, that's what this podcast is about. Because if we would have agreed, I mean...
There's no point. We're done. It's over. It's over. Pack your bags, people. Okay. We're talking about a president who has outsourced the most jobs in the last, I believe it's since Kennedy. Even before. Could even be since before FDR. He has outsourced roughly 100,000 jobs, and his first term is not even done. He has detained more immigrants and children, and yes, Obama did it too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not pro-Obama.
Yeah, you're not naive.
I'm not stupid. But he has detained more immigrants and has now taken away more children than even possible. He set a record for that. He surpassed Obama's drone strikes in the first year. He destroyed NAFTA and TPP, which is fine because he's trying to protect wages. But he's now instilled the MUSCA, which has done nothing. He gave $1 trillion tax cut to the top 1%, which over a period of 10 years destroys the middle class. And I'll keep going. He now has defunded year on year, thanks to Betsy DeVos, my favorite political character. I think she's an absolute joke. You have defunded the U.S. education system on the public side by billions of dollars, and you managed to still say that you're a wonderful president. You're the same person that has basically endorsed David Duke and has told people that you're for all lives matter rather than Black Lives Matter. You're the same person that has endorsed white supremacy. It's not just about your diplomatic speech. It's about your actual policy. And he's done... I mean, there was news today on the day that we're recording right now. He actually decided to cancel student debt for disabled veterans. I don't know if you knew that. Why not stop? Why not cancel all debt for all students and generate more growth in the economy? Instead, what do? Focus on your billionaire class, your top 1%, and make yourself possibly one of the worst presidents in the United States. I'm not for Obama. I wasn't for Hillary. I was for Bernie, obviously, and we'll get into that. And that's who I'd vote for. But I think Trump is first and foremost possibly one of the most despicable people I've ever seen. And secondly, I may invoke the 25th Amendment. I think genuinely that's where we're at. I genuinely think this is a person who holds no bards, who doesn't care, and who, in my opinion, holds no certification and is not able to hold the presidency. Look, we had two of the worst shootings in the U.S. in the last month. The Ohio shooting, and then you had the El Paso shooting. And what does he say? Video games are bad. That to you is a good president who's trying to protect his people? Or is it a corrupt politician who has one meeting with the NRA and is then told, you know what, the lobbyists win? And you know what the worst part is? And no one talks about this because God forbid anybody talks about this. They even said... They reported one meeting with the NRA, and Trump says, well, they like me a lot, so that's it. That was my Trump impression, by the way. I hope you enjoyed it. But this is a despicable person with terrible policy, and anybody who falls for this rhetoric needs to maybe, open their eyes. I don't know what you think, but for me, it's an absolute farce. And the fact that he even got in... and you can talk about Cambridge Analytica. You can talk about Hillary lost. He won. People resonated. This is the same guy who said maybe in 2016 we should be getting out of the wars that we've been in since 2001, talking about Iraq and Afghanistan, of course. Maybe we should be getting out of NAFTA and TPP, and instead his protectionist policies, which actually endorsed him and got him the presidency at first, are what's killing him now. And that's why the man I'm voting for is your dad, Bernard Sanders.
Your dad and mine.
Your dad and mine.
Sweet Bernie.
He's by far the best candidate. He's got a Green New Deal. He plans to actually help the middle class, cancel student debt. This is the man for the people. And the fact that everyone shits on him, to me, it's an absolute joke. And I love it because people say he's not diplomatic. No, you're right. Because when people call him out, he will be back. He's the person that's going to campaign for the people. He's the person who wants to, amend the or fix the Second Amendment. He's the person who's actually for women's rights the most. He's the person who's going to fix gun reform, gun legislation. He's the person who just released trillions of dollars into a Green New Deal that actually protects us as a people and protects basically the survival of the human race. And we'll get to that too, because we got to talk about the Amazon, Bob. But for me, when anybody talks about this and they tell me Trump's doing a good job, or that you have anyone other than Bernie that could actually help the U.S., I want to laugh at you.
But I'm going back to the same thing that I said about Bill 21. I'm going to say it here again. Politicians inherently serve their base.
Are you serving your base when you're giving them a...
Politicians inherently serve their base.
Who's his base, Bob?
The people that elected him.
Who elected him?
All those people that you mentioned in your tirade.
You got me going.
All those people of the NRA, of the upper 1%.
White evangelicals.
All these people that you just mentioned.
People in the Rust Belt.
That you really don't... Yeah. These are all the people that you despise and hate.
The Rust Belt. No, absolutely not. Hold on. Whoa. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The Rust Belt, by the way, are, ironically, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia is not part of it, but that played a significant role. Wisconsin. These are states that represent the middle class.
But those that voted for him, they're part of the base, meaning... every one of them had an agenda for which they voted for, which was served through the last 3.5 years.
And yet Hillary was leading in every poll before.
Why? That I cannot comment on, because I think the hatred of Hillary, as I call it, during the time of Trump, there's two things about politics I wanted to say. One was about the base, the comment I made about the base.
Yeah.
The other one is, I think people really, really want change. And not because change is good or change is needed, but it's just that I want to see something new. And I think that whole newness came from, okay, enough Hillary, enough Obama.
Let's get a person who declared bankrupt 5 times in a row, Trump University.
Let's do something different.
Of course.
Let's do something different. And that's why grab him by the pussy is still okay.
Yeah.
Who's the guy from Entertainment Tonight that was in the van? I really like that guy.
Billy Bush.
Skip Snyder? Billy Bush. I called him Skip Snyder. I knew it was one of those crazy American names.
Yeah.
I got to admit, man, Bush did a great job. And we never really trusted in Bush before. We never gave him the recognition of the amazing work that he did on that autobus. Listen to me speaking French. On the autobus. On that bus.
Right.
But all I'm saying is...
You think the fact that he gave Trump exposure is a good thing?
You have to remember that he played to his base. And there are people in America that also believe in grab him by the pussy.
But there's no. Whoa, hold on.
There are people in America that believe that.
You cannot. I mean, look, he's got an approval rating. He hovers between 28 and 40%. You cannot tell me that everyone. That's a bit of a red herring. Everyone that votes for him is, by default because they voted for him. Okay
Everybody
with
got something out of it.
But they're not okay. Obviously, no one is. A vast majority of voters for Trump and the vast majority of Americans and Canadians are not okay with grabbing by the pussy, are not okay with Mexicans or rapists, are not okay with kill ISIS's family.
But there's some people that are.
Maybe, but that's not the point. The point is there were so many voters that were undecided. And they didn't care about that because, like the first point you said, they hated Hillary so much.
I know.
They hated because I'm getting to that. They hated a pro-establishment candidate. They hated someone that they knew would just be an Obama 2.0 because Obama, despite being really liked, really screwed up. He did a lot of things that didn't help people in counties.
Including what? Obamacare?
Obamacare is a Republican plan. He couldn't go public when he had a supermajority in the House and the Senate. He allowed 30 million people to not have Medicare. Imagine that, Bob. We live in Canada. Can you imagine? 30 million people. Actually, you know what? Let's put it to you this way. In the U.S., on average, and this is including suicide, 35,000 people die every year from guns. And about 35,000 people, and you can look this up, it hovers between 30 and 40, but please, to anyone, look this up. You, if you are in that 30 to 40,000, will die because either you died because of a gun, that's one group, and then there's another 30 to 40,000 that die because they can't afford insurance, and they can't afford their hospital bills, so they don't go. That is a legacy Obama left behind. And that, to me, that's just one example. There are many others that I could mention. I won't go through all the details, but he screwed over these people. And so they wanted an anti-establishment change. And they got it. And that doesn't make these people all automatically by default for these grab 'em by the pussy comments. And for, it doesn't make them all deplorables, as Hillary said it. That's another reason she lost. You immediately discount everybody that you think will automatically vote for Trump. You don't necessarily have to...
I think America was in for a huge surprise.
I agree, but you don't necessarily have to reach out to everyone, but you need to make sure that your plans cater to everyone and not the 1% like you're doing now. Right. You cannot cater to the billionaires. You cannot cater to the Amazons of the world, to the Jeff Bezoses of the world, to the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. My God, what world are we going to end up being? The one where an election can be, updated or changed or altered at the touch of a button?
There's a great movie on Netflix about that, by the way.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly what I was going to say because
Really?
That is exactly what happened. You're talking about The Great Hack?
The Great Hack.
That's exactly right. It is exactly what I was going to get at. One click of a button, one psychographic marketing company said, you know what? Let's go after 3 states. Let's have them do Facebook surveys. And you know what? We can alter an election. And they did it for Trump and they did it for UKIP. And that's how you beget change. Change begets change with a tyrant, with a fascist, with a person who thinks...
So are we ready for change again? Do you think 2020 is all about let's change to something else or more of the same?
How is it possible that there are 3 people in the United States that own almost 50% of all wealth being generated in the United States? How is it possible?
It's the result of a capitalistic viewpoint.
It's a result of corporate greed.
And capitalism.
No, you can have capitalism without someone...
No, you can't.
Oh, my goodness.
You can't have half capitalism and half not capitalism.
It's almost like there's such a thing as a mixed economy.
No. You're expecting people to make the most money they can for the time that they're living. That's capitalism.
Okay.
So if that's the case, then why would you restrict people from having the most amount of money that they can have? There's always going to be somebody number 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the list.
Okay.
There's always going to be somebody.
Love it. Let's go back to Bernie. He wants to eliminate college or student debt. Public schools. And he wants to make public schools tuition free. He wants to do 2 of those things. How does he do that, Bob? Everyone says he's a commie, he's a socialist. How's he going to do? He wants to tax capital gains on Wall Street. By how much, Bob? Why don't you guess how much?
50%?
0.02 or 0.002, something like that.
And he's going to have all the money.
And he's going to have all the money because that's how much they make. Do you see? There's that much greed. Let me give you another example. New wealth generated year on year since about 2015. 90% of it has gone to the 1%. After inflation, on account of inflation, since the 1970s, wages and median income has stayed at what, Bob? 35,000. That means how many people are in the U.S.? 360 million. The 180th and 1 millionth person basically makes $35,000 a year, and anybody under that makes less. Tell me how that's fair. Can we fix the system? Absolutely. And I think Bernie's the answer. 100%. And you can't tell me that that's a problem or that capitalism is what needs to be fixed. It's called a mixed economy.
So if that's the case, you're saying this is so important that these people are only making 35,000 after 180 million. That's enough people to bring Bernie in with no question at all. If all those people went out and voted today, Bernie would be in tomorrow.
Well, roughly, I mean...
But it's not the case.
You have to account for adults, 18-year-olds, so we're talking about 300 million.
All I'm saying is, if a large share of those people went and voted Bernie today...
How many of them are registered as Democrats?
I don't know
But that's how it works. But that's how it works.
I don't know the answer.
The system is rigged against him. Bob, in the primaries, you must... I mean, again, I don't want to get into the details, but you must be a registered Democrat months before. They're afraid of him. They're afraid of this guy. They don't want him. No one wants him. Watch the news. Watch MSNBC. Watch any of them. They are terrified of this man, and I love it.
Which man?
Of Bernie.
Oh.
Of Mr. Sanders. Of your dad, Bernard. What they want is to be able to lock the vote up. Because you're right. If it were the popular vote, he would win 100%.
There's no other way to do it then?
No, that is how it works in the U.S. You must be a registered Democrat to be able to beat the primaries. And who are registered Democrats? Establishment candidate voters. That is why right now, if you look at the polls, who's winning right now in the polls?
Trump, right?
Joe Biden.
Oh, yes.
Joe Biden is up on Trump by 4 points. And both... all three candidates who are leading right now, Biden, Warren, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders, all beat Trump in the polls right now by about 5 to 8 points. The point is, I mean, we're talking about Bill 21, we're talking about politics.
Let's see where that ends.
How do you cater to a base while also doing the right thing? At first we're talking...
It's a good point.
Are we talking about, you catering to a base and trying to just tell an individual that they're not allowed to wear what they want while being able to get certified and do the right job with integrity?
Issue. That's a very complex issue. Because like I said, it's a very protectionist thing. You don't want to go back to the days of the 1940s and 50s. The Quebecers have a historical context with relationship to that. They want to make sure that religion doesn't take precedence again. All I'm saying is there's a collateral damage to that, which is in today's day, you want to encourage immigration. These are not things that encourage immigration.
Why do you want to encourage immigration?
Well, now are we going to get into the basics of how an economy rolls?
Well, I mean,
Quebec
so many people seem to be adamantly... Well, we have a shortage of labor. Of course.
A shortage of labor, a shortage of skilled labor, and a shortage of investment. How are you gonna spirit those things without having proper immigration levels?
According to Trump, according to François Legault, according to the CAQ, according to all these people, the immigrants are the problem.
There you go.
Are you kidding me? The fact that
they're not part of the base. These people, although they are part of the solution, are not part of the voting base.
And yet they're part of the, according to the base, a so-called invasion.
Oh, yeah.
Invasion of culture.
They're a risk.
An intrusion of privacy on their end, an intrusion of culture.
They're a risk.
And to me, I see it all as a political game.
Absolutely.
And that's the underlying issue I was trying to get at.
Thank you for relating the 2 points together. It is the underlying issue.
It really is, and that's the underlying problem I was trying to get at.
If you ever follow Twitter, one of my favorite people that I love to follow is a person called God. He's actually got a picture of
on Twitter, yeah.
On Twitter.
I
Ever follow God?
Yes, of course.
And one of the really good things that God wrote this week on the Twitter
I follow him on Facebook.
I'm trying to remember how did he write it? The as the real Amazon burns, the fake Amazon gets fatter.
Oh my
What a
goodness.
what a great way to say it. As the real Amazon burns, the fake Amazon gets fatter.
I tried looking.
What a great way to say it.
I tried looking up.
So you're okay with the Amazon burning?
No, I'm getting to it.
That one of the points you wanted to talk about?
Well, I was about to say I was looking up the Amazon burning, and I was looking up, because we're talking about corporate greed and we're talking about, catering to a base.
Right.
And, before you even got to the Amazon burning, there were 3 links to Amazon, the company Amazon, before you could even get to basically the world's lungs, because they produce 20% of the world's oxygen, before you could even get to the world's lungs burning right now, which of course people don't care about.
No, because it's not an immediate problem.
That's right, to them. Their house is not on fire. They don't see a problem. They can breathe. It was hot yesterday. It was cold today. It doesn't matter.
But I can tell you the youth of this country, Canada and the US, are obsessed with climatic change. I have never seen such a movement before. And it came to light, not only it's going to come to light in this federal election, the Canadian federal election coming up in October, but it's also coming to light in Bernie's platform in the US. I never saw the youth wings so engaged. I never saw so much protest and social media presence regarding climactic. And in fact, I'm surprised the youth of today, what I call the Xers,
of course,
are very concerned about the fact that all other goals that we are working on are almost irrelevant.
Second to none. Two main policies.
If we don't fix up the climate.
Climate change and Medicare for all. Those are his 2 platforms that he's running on.
You're talking about Bernie, but I'm just talking about the youth wing.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
very
of course,
obsessed with that. And I think that's translating into votes, and that's translating into populist platforms in the government.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about populist platforms, whether it be the Amazon, Bernie,
it's cool
Quebec,
to talk about that right now.
It's a populist platform.
You're absolutely right.
Now, the whole underlying arch to all of this is that the bases don't matter, people. They don't matter. Open your eyes, look up, read a little, and you'll see the Amazon is burning. Bernie's actually the right candidate, and Bill 21 is a joke.
Well, I think Bill 21 is not a serious part of anybody's life in terms of their future plans. I mean,
it's a joke.
Yeah.
It's an absolute joke.
But the vote is going to be interesting to see, both federally in Canada in October, which really the campaign hasn't even begun, and we're very close to September. I'm really surprised that really hasn't been.
Nothing has skyrocketed. I've heard no news about anyone.
Nothing has really been out there, and I think it's going to be a very quick election. It's going to be a very quick campaign and election.
Very much so.
And I think the American one will be also a bit of a shock. As I've told you before, I would abstain because I really don't know who to vote for, but I can see your dad Bernie is topmost.
My dad Bernard is by all means the top candidate. But you're right. I think the federal election is going to be interesting because it's almost like they're trying to,
just swing it in, right?
Just swing it in behind the American election.
Yeah. Let's open the curtain a little bit. Let's do it for 2-3 weeks. Debate the same issues.
Yeah, of course.
SNC-Lavalin, the climate change, and then close the curtain and boom, go to the polling station. And you're probably going to say at the polling station, is my life really that bad for 4 years? I've done pretty well, Let's do more of the same. Yeah. Let's do more of the same.
And then what do you do? What do you end up being?
More of the same.
And you end up becoming...
more of the same.
The base.
You're right.
That's exactly right.
And so on that note, I got to admit, your incestuous laugh and your
well, the chemistry was good there. I like the way we're going to say on that. No, but by all means, please.
By all means, please. Is there anything else that you feel that if anybody has put together a great Bernie platform and a great anti-Simon Jolin Barrette platform,
this would be the place.
You've done a fantastic job of that.
Oh, and you.
Fantastic job. I've tried to be fair. and equitable, as I always am. But at the same time, I can see your opinion on these topics.
You have to call out bullshit. And this is the difference between, older podcasts and this one. We're going to start calling out bullshit. We're going to start really questioning people, even if it's about, training, sex, relationships, music, comic books. I don't care. Right. We're going to question people, and we're going to understand how people can relate, because what matters is how we get change.
Absolutely.
It's all about change, and that's how we reach a climax. Sur ce,
the goddamn climax.
We'll see you soon, everybody.
All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.